Hi, my name is Rich Carlson, N9JIG. This is my shack. If you've ever called Scanner Master's 800 number, 1-800-SCANNER, chances are I'm the guy that answers the phone there. About 2 years ago or so in our old house in Illinois, I was getting sick of seeing antenna cables and power cables running all over the office. My wife was complaining about the mess as well, so I started looking into rack mounting my equipment. I've got a lot of radios, as you can see, and I did a lot of research, and I found a company in New York called Northcom that sold rack mounting gear for 2-way radios. And the cabinets themselves are made by Chief Manufacturing, and the faceplates are mostly from Autodesk. And I bought all this equipment from Northcom as kind of an all-inclusive package. On the rack on the far left over here is where I have my ICOM R8500, and above that are two decoders, one for PL tones and one for MDC. And above that I've got the ICOM IC7000, which I use for HF. I can talk on 2 meters 440 and all the HF handbands, but to tell you the truth, I use it mostly for shortwave listening. I also have a Uniden scanner, which I use for ham radio repeaters and such in the area. And above that is a Whistler 1095 scanner that I use for local activity. You can also see this computer monitor for my PC, in which I run my AirNav radar box. I run Pro 96Com, and I also run my SDR Play using SDR Sharp off that as well. On the center rack over here, I have mostly what I call my mill air rack, and that has a bunch of BCT-15 scanners, which I use for military aircraft. I have a PSR 410, which I also use for local aircraft. I have a 2 meter 440 Kenwood dual bander, and then a couple Radio Shack PSR Pro 197 and GRE PSR 500. Or PSR 600 that I use for Pro 96Com as well. On the far rack over here, I have my local scanner monitoring channel radios, a couple BCT-15Xs, a couple 996s, an XT and a P2, BCD 536HP, Home Patrol 1 and Home Patrol 2, and I use those for monitoring my local police, fire, EMS channels. I've got one set up for railroads, another one set up for local airports, and one for the DPS troopers, one for the county trunk system, and another for the area-wide system. Above that I have two CDM 1250s, one on UHF I use mostly for GMRS, and the VHF one I use for 2 meters and occasionally listening to some local channels. I've got clocks for the 4 time zones in the continental US. People call in from all over the country, and it's easier just to look at the clock to figure out what time zone they're in. And then I have my collection of handheld scanners. Got a BCD 436 HP, which is my normal everyday scanner. Got a 396 XT, a 325 P2, a BC 125 AT, a what is that? A Pro 106 from Radio Shack, and a couple other miscellaneous scanners and dual band rigs that I use for ham and such. I do a lot of train watching and plane watching, so when I do that, I usually take my 396 or my 325 because they're small and they fit in a shirt pocket. And the other scanners I use for different purposes all the time. I use a PC for the programming and for the radar box, etc. It's 3 gigahertz i7 with 9 gigs of RAM and a 1 terabyte SSD. It's plenty powerful enough to run all my stuff. I can run all the programs at the same time. It automatically updated itself to Windows 10, which so far has been working pretty well for me. Just a few minor glitches here and there that I've been able to figure out. My main computer though is an iMac 27-inch, and it's got 32 gigs of RAM. I also can run Windows on that through Parallels, and it's got a second 27-inch monitor, which I use for my work during the daytime and working on the internet. I do scanner programming with it. and just about anything else that you would use a computer for. And that's pretty much it for the radios. Up in the attic, I've got about 20 different antennas, including 4 of the AntennaCraft ST2s and a couple of the ST3 scanner antennas. They're awesome scanner antennas. If you get your hand on any ST2s, they work really well. Unfortunately, they're not made anymore, but they are still probably the best scanner antenna out there for a base station. I've got a couple diamond disc cones and a couple dual band verticals for my 2 meter 440 rigs, a couple wire HF dipoles, and a 6 foot tall ADS-B antenna for the radar box. There's a couple ground planes for the CDMs, and a couple other miscellaneous antennas. All my antennas are in the attic. I live in an association which does not allow outside antennas. So to keep the association people happy, I put them all up in the attic, and nobody knows they're there but me. When we moved in here, I had a carpenter come in, tear down the wall in my office, and run the coaxes through the wall and down to a couple ports underneath the desk, and then basically put the wall back up. And then a while later, I had a friend of mine in the valley here come in and help me put the antennas in the attic. Well, he did the work, I kind of watched. And so now I've got all my antennas up in the attic, and they work really well. Got a couple spare coax cables in case I decide to add an antenna later. And it all works pretty well. I live about 1,700 feet above sea level, which is a few hundred feet higher than the city of Phoenix. And I'm about 60 miles from downtown Phoenix, so I don't have a lot of the noise. I got some elevation so I can hear most of this stuff down in the valley. I don't get a lot of intermod. There is a antenna farm about 20 miles away from here that occasionally I'll get some interference from, but not often. There's a lot of military aircraft operations up here. I get F-16s and F-35s running around the house all the time, so there's a lot of stuff to listen to on the radio if you're in the middle air, which I am. And all in all, it works real well. I'm happy with it. Each of the 3 boxes are pretty independent of each other, and I can do a lot of modifications to them without disrupting the other ones. And down the road, I intend to put an antenna patch panel underneath the desk to make it easier to swap antennas. Right now, I gotta reach in behind the boxes in order to swap an antenna out. This way, I just have the jumpers, and I could just go under the desk and swap it from one antenna port to another. I'll probably do that sometime this summer when the weather gets too hot to do much outside. So that's basically my shack. I hope you enjoyed it, and keep an eye out, and I'm sure I'll be changing something again soon. I always do. Thanks, I'm Rich N9JIG.